He grabbed the blind date invitation off the counter and threw it straight in the trash. "I'm done," James said out loud to nobody. To the empty kitchen, to the half-eaten bowl of cereal his daughter left this morning before school. "I'm not doing this." He meant it. He had meant it every single time Kevin asked. Then his phone rang. He picked up without thinking. "Daddy," Amara's voice small and serious. "Mrs. Patterson says you have a date tonight." He closed his eyes. "It's not a... Is she going to be my new mommy?" The kitchen went completely silent. James stood there holding the phone with both hands like it might break. 7 years old. His daughter was 7 years old, and she was already looking for someone to fill a seat that was never supposed to be empty. He reached into the trash, pulled the invitation back out, smoothed it flat against his chest. 45 minutes later, he walked into the wrong restaurant, sat at the wrong table, and destroyed the carefully built walls of the most powerful woman in America. She didn't see him coming. Neither did he. Drop your city in the comments right now. I want to see exactly how far this story travels before the night is over. And if nobody told you to subscribe yet, I'm telling you now. You will not want to miss what happens next. The night it all started, James Caldwell was already 22 minutes late. His left shoe was untied, and he had a small smear of children's grape-flavored cough syrup on the sleeve of his only good dress shirt. He noticed the cough syrup in the Uber. He tried to wipe it off with his thumb, which only made it worse. A long, pale purple streak that now looked intentional, like some kind of fashion choice made by a man who had absolutely no business making fashion choices. He rolled down his sleeve to hide it, then rolled it back up because it was July in Chicago, and the restaurant had a line out the door, and he was already sweating through the collar. "Perfect," he muttered to no one. The driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "You good, man?" "Great," James said. "Absolutely great." He was not great. He had spent the last 45 minutes sitting on the bathroom floor of his apartment. Not because anything was physically wrong with him, but because his 7-year-old daughter, Amara, had looked up at him while he was trying to comb her hair, and said in the most matter-of-fact voice a child could possibly use, "Daddy, do you think Mommy can see us from heaven?" And James Caldwell, a 34-year-old man who had survived 6 years of grief, who had learned to cook from YouTube tutorials at midnight, who had sat through every single parent-teacher conference alone, and smiled through every single one, had completely fallen apart on the bathroom floor, while Amara patted his back and said, "It's okay, Daddy. Mommy told me she'd always watch." He didn't ask when Mommy told her that. He just held her for a long time. Then he called Mrs. Patterson. Next door, dropped Amara off with her overnight bag, and her stuffed elephant, kissed her on the forehead 3 times, once for him, once for her, and once always for Renee, and climbed into an Uber headed to a restaurant he did not want to go to for a date. He had not agreed to wearing a shirt with grape cough syrup on the sleeve. The whole thing had been Kevin's idea. Kevin Marsh, his best friend since college, his co-worker at the logistics firm. The man who still thought cargo shorts were appropriate office attire had decided unilaterally and without any democratic process whatsoever that James needed to get back out there. "It's been 6 years, Jay," Kevin had said, leaning against the copy machine like he was delivering a TED Talk. "Renee would want you to be happy." "Don't do that," James said flatly. "Do what? Use my dead wife to pressure me into a blind date?" Kevin winced. "That's fair. That was a bad move, but also she would." James had said no 4 times, definitively, with full sentences. And then somehow, on a Thursday afternoon, he had said yes, not because Kevin convinced him, but because Amara had found a drawing she made in kindergarten. A picture of their family. Mommy, Daddy, and baby Amara all holding hands under a big yellow sun. Amara had stared at it for a long time. Then she said, "Daddy, do you have a best friend?" "Kevin," James said. "No," she said with the absolute authority of a 7-year-old. "A real best friend, like a person you love." He didn't answer. She looked up at him. "It's okay if you don't. I'll be your best friend." He called Kevin that night and said yes. The restaurant was called Meridian. It was the kind of place James normally walked past, floor-to-ceiling windows, soft gold lighting, the kind of quiet that cost money. Kevin had made the reservation and given him a name, Christine. Brown hair, red dress, she'll be at the bar. He was supposed to meet her at 7. It was 7:22. He pushed through the front door, past the hostess stand, and into the noise and warmth of the main dining room. The bar was to his left. He scanned it quickly. 2 men in suits, an older couple, a woman in blue, another in black. His phone buzzed. Kevin. She's running late too, LOL. She said she'll be there by 7:45. Just grab a table and wait. She knows what you look like. James exhaled. Great. Now I'm waiting alone at a fancy restaurant in a grape-stained shirt. He looked around for an empty table. The hostess was occupied with a large party near the entrance. The dining room was mostly full white tablecloths. Candles, the low murmur of conversations that all seemed more important than his. He spotted an open seat, a two-top near the back window. A woman sitting alone on one side looking down at her phone. The other chair was empty. He threaded through the room, set his jacket over the back of the chair and sat down. Sorry I'm late, he said, pulling in toward the table. The traffic on Michigan Avenue was... The woman looked up. She was not what he expected. That wasn't even the right way to think about it. He hadn't known what to expect. Kevin had said brown hair and red dress, and this woman had dark brown hair pulled back loosely, and she was wearing a deep burgundy blouse, which was close enough to red that his brain registered it and moved on. But it was her eyes that stopped him. Not because they were beautiful, though they were. Dark, steady, careful. It was the way she looked at him. Not with the expectant warmth of a blind date. Not with the performed casualness of someone pretending they hadn't been checking their phone for 20 minutes. She looked at him the way someone looks at a stranger who just sat down at their table, because that was exactly what he was. I'm sorry, she said slowly. Do we know each other? James blinked. Something shifted in his chest. Christine. The woman's expression didn't change, but something moved through it, a flicker of something. She glanced down at the table, then back at him. No, she said quietly. My name is Vivian. The silence lasted approximately 3 full seconds. Then James pushed back his chair. Oh God, I'm so sorry. The hostess was busy and I thought... He looked around the restaurant, suddenly seeing it completely differently. I sat at the wrong table. I'm sorry, It's okay, she said. I'll find another... There aren't any, she said. He stopped. She nodded toward the dining room. I've been watching. You were looking at the only empty seat in the room. They're full. James looked. She was right. He stood there half out of his chair, hand on the back of it, caught in the specific social purgatory of a man who has made an error and has no clean exit. I can wait at the bar. You can, she agreed. A pause. Or, she said, and something almost imperceptible shifted in her voice. Not quite warmth, but something adjacent to it. You can sit down. I've already been alone at this table for 40 minutes, and the waiter keeps coming by to ask if I'm still waiting. She said still waiting with a very precise kind of dryness that suggested she had many feelings about that phrase. James looked at her. She looked back at him. I don't want to intrude, he said. You already did, she said. Might as well stay. He sat down. He didn't mean to start talking. That was the thing he would think about later. He genuinely did not intend for the conversation to become what it became. He planned to sit quietly, order a water wait for his actual date, and exit this woman's evening as unobtrusively as possible. But then the waiter came, and she ordered a sparkling water with lemon, and James, for absolutely no logical reason, said, My daughter calls sparkling water spicy water. She refuses to drink it. Vivienne looked at him. How old is she? 7, he said. 7 going on 45. She corrects my grammar. And something crossed Vivian's face, fast gone, almost before it arrived. But he saw it. A smile. Not a polite one. Not the practiced, controlled expression he would come to understand she wore like a second skin in every professional setting she'd ever been in. A real one, small, private, involuntary. Like a light that turned on in a room someone had forgotten was there. 7-year-olds are ruthless, she said. Completely ruthless, he agreed. Last week she told me my cooking tasted like sad. Sad. Her exact word. Daddy, this tastes like sad. And the worst part is, she wasn't wrong. I made this lemon chicken that I found online, and I didn't have lemon, so I used orange juice, and it was genuinely a sad meal. Vivian laughed. It was a short laugh, almost startled, like she hadn't meant to do it. James noticed that too. The waiter came and went. James ordered a club soda. His actual date hadn't texted. He kept his phone face down on the table in case she called. "Can I ask," Vivian said in the deliberate way of a person who measures their words carefully, "where her mother is?" The question wasn't invasive. It was quiet. And something about the way she asked it without performing sympathy, without preloading an expression of practiced condolence, made him answer honestly. "She passed away," he said, "6 years ago. Cancer." "I'm sorry." "Thank you." He paused. "We were both 28. You don't think about that at 28. You think you have all this time." Vivian was quiet for a moment. Then, "No, you don't." There was something in those 3 words. Not pity. Something heavier and more personal than pity. "You sound like you know something about that," he said. She glanced down at her glass. "Everyone does. Eventually." He let it go. Something told him not to push. Pye. Her name was Vivian Hale. She told him that much. She didn't offer what she did for a living, and he didn't ask, partly because he was raised to consider it rude, partly because he genuinely didn't care. She asked him what he did, and he told her logistics coordinator for a mid-size shipping company. He moved freight across the Midwest on spreadsheets and conference calls. "Glamorous," he said. "Sounds stable," she replied. And the way she said it with something that sounded almost like longing made him look at her more closely. She was composed, almost preternaturally composed. The way she held herself, the way she watched the room in brief, controlled glances, the way her hands stayed folded on the table, rather than moving when she talked, it all pointed to someone who had learned deliberately to take up as little observable space as possible, while actually occupying a great deal of it. That was the contradiction he kept bumping up against. She seemed contained, and yet somehow, in a room full of noise and motion, she was the most present person he'd ever sat across from. "You don't laugh much," he said after a while. She tilted her head. "I laugh." "You laughed once. You looked surprised about it." She studied him. "You're very observant." "I have a 7-year-old. Observant is survival." That almost smile again. "What's her name?" "Amara." "That's a beautiful name. Her mother picked it," he said. "It means grace in Igbo. My wife was Nigerian American. I'm just American." He laughed a little at himself. "Regular, plain American, from Cincinnati." "There's nothing plain about Cincinnati," she said with a perfectly straight face. He stared at her for half a second. Then he laughed, a real one, loud enough that the couple at the next table glanced over. "Was that a joke?" he said. "I don't really make jokes," she said, but something danced at the corners of her mouth. "That was absolutely a joke. I genuinely don't know what you're referring to." He told her about the cough syrup on his sleeve. He told her about the bathroom floor. He didn't tell her about Amara's question. "Do you think Mommy can see us from heaven?" Because some things were sacred, and he was still holding that one close. But he told her about the drawing, the family under the yellow sun. He told her about Kevin and the blind date he didn't want to be on, and as he said it, he realized with a start that he was on it, the date, just with entirely the wrong woman. He told her about the Saturday morning ritual. He and Amara had blueberry pancakes every single Saturday, because that was what Renee used to make, and now he made them badly consistently every week, because Amara lit up like sunrise every time she saw them on the plate. "She puts chocolate chips in hers now," he said. "Renee would have loved that." "You talk about her like she's still in the room," Vivian said. He looked at her. "She is," he said simply. "She's in every room I'm in. I just learned to stop being sad about it and start being grateful." He expected the usual response. The "that's so beautiful," or the head tilted "I can't imagine," or the slow blink of someone absorbing a grief they were relieved wasn't theirs. Vivian did none of those things. She just looked at him for a long, still moment. "I don't know how to do that," she said. The words came out quieter than the rest. Not confessional exactly, more like an observation, a small, precise truth she had placed on the table between them. "Do what," he said. "Keep someone present after they're gone," she said. I think I've learned to do the opposite. Put people behind doors and close them." He didn't respond immediately. He picked up his glass, took a slow drink. "That sounds exhausting," he finally said. She blinked. Whatever she'd expected him to say, it wasn't that. "It is," she admitted. It was 8:53 when James realized he hadn't checked his phone in over an hour. He flipped it over. 2 missed texts from Kevin. "Yo, Christine bailed LOL. Said she got caught up. She's really sorry. You okay?" And the second 12 minutes later, James. "Buddy, did you get mugged or something? Text me back." He looked up at Vivian. "My actual date canceled," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "So you've been sitting here for 90 minutes, he said. "Having a great dinner with someone I accidentally crashed." She looked down at the table. He watched her process something. He could see the small war of it on her face, the way she almost smiled, and then seemed to catch herself, as if smiling too much at this stranger was a door she wasn't sure she should open. "I should let you," he began. "I ordered the tiramisu," she said. "When you were in the restroom. It arrives in 10 minutes. A pause. "You could stay for dessert." He looked at her. "Or," she said, "you could go home and text your friend back." "Kevin can wait," James said. She nodded once. "Then stay," she said. He stayed until 10:15. He found out she was from Boston originally, that she had one sister she talked to rarely, that she'd been in Chicago for 8 years and still didn't feel like she belonged to it, which he said made her more of a Chicagoan than she realized, because that was how Chicago made everyone feel. She told him she didn't cook. Not couldn't, didn't. Like cooking was a thing that had not made it onto the list of things Vivian Hale chose to allocate her attention to. He found that genuinely baffling. "How do you eat?" he said. "I have people." "People?" "Assistants. A chef sometimes." He leaned back in his chair. "A chef sometimes." "Is that strange?" "I make orange juice chicken and my daughter tells me it tastes like sad," he said. "Yeah, a sometimes chef is a little strange to me." She almost laughed again. The same startled, involuntary thing. He was learning the shape of it, the way her chin lifted slightly, the way her eyes changed before her mouth did. "You do that thing," he said. "What thing?" "You smile and then you take it back. Like you caught yourself." The table went quiet. For a moment, Vivian Hale looked at him with something that wasn't composure at all. It was something rawer than that unguarded brief and completely real. "I do," she said. "I know I do." He didn't ask her why. Something about the air between them told him she knew the answer and wasn't ready to say it. And he had learned raising a little girl who had lost her mother that some truths couldn't be rushed. So he let it sit. And she let him let it sit. And for a few minutes, they were just 2 people finishing the last of the tiramisu in a restaurant that was slowly emptying the city, humming on the other side of the window. The night doing what nights in July in Chicago do, warm, heavy, lit up, and unhurried. At 10:15, James put his card on the table. "You don't have to," she began. "I sat at your table by accident," he said. "Least I can do." She looked at the card for a moment, then at him. "I could argue that I benefited from the company." "Then we both did," he said. "Call it even." She nodded slowly. He stood, reached for his jacket, hesitated. "Vivian," he said. She looked up. "Thank you for not kicking me out when you could have." She was quiet for a second. Then, "Thank you for staying." He smiled, the kind that moves slow, takes the whole face with it. The kind that Amara always said made him look like a cartoon character because it was too big. He didn't shake Vivian's hand. He didn't ask for her number. He didn't say we should do this again in the hollow, non-committal way of a man who has no intention of following through. He just nodded once and walked away. Outside, the night air hit him. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment. The city moved around him, taxis, conversation, the distant horn of a train. He pulled out his phone and texted Kevin back. "I'm alive." It was a weird night. "Tell you tomorrow." Kevin responded immediately. "Dude, where were you?" He put the phone in his pocket and started walking toward the L. He thought about the way she smiled and then put it back. He thought about, "I think I've learned to do the opposite. Put people behind doors and close them." He thought about the look on her face when he said, "She's in every room I'm in." That specific, unguarded 2-second window where the composure dropped entirely and something else was underneath. He thought about a woman eating alone in a restaurant for 40 minutes before a stranger sat down across from her by accident. He thought about how, for a woman who had people, and a sometimes chef, she had eaten that entire dinner as if she hadn't expected anyone to join her. Not the blind date kind of alone. The other kind. The kind that comes from something deeper than an empty seat. He didn't know her story. But he knew the way you sometimes know things without being able to explain them, that there was a story, and that she hadn't finished telling it. The train came. He got on. And across the city, in a penthouse on the 38th floor, Vivian Hale stood at the floor-to-ceiling window and looked out at the lights below, and for the first time in a very long time, she did not put the smile away before it finished arriving. She let it stay, just for a moment, just long enough to feel it. Then she turned back to her desk and the contracts and the city that needed her to be brilliant and cold and completely unreachable. But her hands, she noticed, were not quite steady, and the tiramisu had been the best thing she'd tasted in months. And she could not for the life of her remember the name of the man she'd originally been waiting for. The morning after the restaurant, James woke up at 5:43, not because his alarm went off, but because Amara was standing next to his bed, 2 inches from his face, staring at him with the focused intensity of someone conducting a scientific observation. He opened one eye. "What?" he said. "Did you like her?" Amara asked. "Good morning to you too." "Did you?" He sat up slowly, rubbed his face. The room was still gray with early light. "How do you even know about Kevin told Mrs. Patterson, didn't he?" "Mrs. Patterson told me," Amara confirmed, climbing up onto the bed and sitting cross-legged at the foot of it, like she was prepared to be there a while. "She said you went on a date. She said it was about time." She tilted her head. "Was it about time, Daddy?" James looked at his daughter. Her hair was still in the 2 braids he'd done yesterday, slightly crooked because he was still learning 6 years in, and her hair had opinions. She was wearing her pajamas with the little yellow stars on them. She had her stuffed elephant Gerald tucked under one arm. She was the most serious 7-year-old he had ever encountered. "It was a weird night," he said carefully. Weird good or weird bad. He thought about that. He thought about Vivian's startled laugh. He thought about put people behind doors and close them. He thought about the way she'd looked at him when he said Renee was still in every room. "Weird good," he said finally. "I think." Amara nodded, satisfied. "Did she like you?" "I don't know." "Did you get her number?" James stared at his child. "Where did you learn to ask that?" "Kevin," she said simply. "I'm going to have a very serious talk with Kevin. So you didn't get her number?" "I did not get her number." Amara sighed. Not dramatically, just a small, genuine sigh, the kind that said she was disappointed but prepared to move on. "Okay," she said. She slid off the bed, tucked Gerald more firmly under her arm. I'll make the pancakes. You don't know how to make pancakes. I know how you make them, she said, already walking out of the room. So I'll make them better. He listened to her small footsteps move down the hall toward the kitchen. He lay back against the pillow and stared at the ceiling. He thought about Vivian Hale for the 47th time since he'd gotten home last night, and then he told himself to stop, and then he thought about her for the 48th time. He got up, went to help his daughter not burn the kitchen down. The pancakes, as it turned out, were actually better. He didn't tell her that. She already knew. Kevin ambushed him at the coffee machine Monday morning. "Talk," Kevin said. He was holding his mug with both hands and had the expression of a man who had been waiting 48 hours for information and was running out of patience. "Good morning, Kevin." "Don't good morning me. You disappeared for 2 hours at a restaurant, didn't text me back until almost 11, and then sent me exactly 9 words. It was a weird night. Tell you tomorrow. It is tomorrow. Talk." James poured his coffee. "Christine bailed." "I know Christine bailed. I know that. What I don't know is what you did for 2 hours in that restaurant after Christine bailed, because based on the look on your face right now, something happened, and you are doing that thing you do where you hold information close to your chest and process it alone for 3 weeks before you tell anyone." "I sat at the wrong table," James said. Kevin blinked. "What?" "The hostess was busy. I thought I saw an empty seat. I sat down across from a woman I'd never met. I thought she was Christine." He took a sip of his coffee. She wasn't Christine. Kevin stared at him. "And then what?" "And then we talked for 2 hours and had tiramisu." A long pause. "You," Kevin said slowly, "accidentally sat across from a random woman at a restaurant and then spent 2 hours talking to her and eating dessert." "That's what I said." "Who is she?" "Her name is Vivian. She's from Boston." "Vivian from Boston." Kevin set his mug down. "James, brother, did you get her number?" "No." "Why not?" "Because it wasn't like that. It was just a conversation." "A 2-hour conversation with tiramisu." "Kevin, was she attractive?" "That's not the point." "That is absolutely one of the points." "Was she?" "Yes," James said, and immediately took a long drink of coffee to give himself something to do with his face. Kevin smiled the smile of a man who has won something. "Okay," he said. "Okay, so what are you going to do about it?" "Nothing," James said. "I don't know her last name. I don't know where she works. I sat at her table by accident, and she probably went home and forgot about the whole thing before she even got in her car." Or, Kevin said, she didn't. "Kevin, I'm just saying, she didn't give me her number either," James said. "If she wanted to continue the conversation, she had the same opportunity I did. She didn't take it. So," he picked up his coffee. "It was a good night. A weird, unexpectedly good night. And that's the whole story." Kevin watched him walk back to his desk. "That is not the whole story," Kevin said to his back. James sat down, put on his headset, and opened his spreadsheets. He told himself Kevin was wrong. He told himself this approximately every 20 minutes for the rest of the day. He saw her face 3 days later, not in person, on television. He was on his lunch break eating a sandwich at his desk, half watching the business news segment that played on the small screen mounted in the corner of the break room when the anchor said, "Hale Industries announced this morning the completion of its acquisition of DataSync Technologies in a deal valued at approximately $4.3 billion. CEO Vivian Hale spoke briefly to reporters outside the company's Chicago headquarters. And there she was. James stopped chewing. The woman on the screen was dressed in a charcoal blazer, standing at a podium in front of a crowd of reporters, cameras flashing around her. Her hair was up. Her expression was composed, completely impenetrably composed. The same dark, careful eyes, the same precise posture. She looked like someone entirely different from the woman who'd said tiramisu arrives in 10 minutes, you could stay for dessert. She looked like someone who had never in her life sat alone at a restaurant table for 40 minutes waiting for a meeting that hadn't shown up. She looked like someone who had never once let a smile escape before she could catch it. The reporter asked her how the acquisition would reshape the tech landscape. Vivian answered in 3 sentences, clean, exact, controlled, and took no further questions. James sat very still at his desk for a long moment. 4.3 billion. A chef sometimes. I have people. He thought about the way she'd said stable when he told her what he did for a living. The longing in it that he'd noticed and filed away. He understood it differently now. He thought about put people behind doors and close them. He thought about a woman worth billions of dollars eating alone at an elegant restaurant on a Friday night, turning down a table of reporters' questions in 30 seconds flat, and letting a stranger who'd accidentally sat across from her talk about blueberry pancakes for 2 hours. He sat there for a long time after the segment ended. Then he went back to his desk, opened his laptop, and typed her name into a search engine. The results loaded. He read for a very long time. Vivian Hale, 32, founder and CEO of Hale Industries, a technology conglomerate she had built from a single software startup she launched at 24, out of a 1-bedroom apartment in Boston. She had been named to Forbes' Billionaires list at 29, one of the youngest women ever to appear on it. She was known in business circles for being brilliant, decisive, and almost entirely private. No social media. Rare public appearances outside of press requirements. The few profiles written about her described her with words like formidable and unreachable, and in one piece from a financial magazine, the most powerful woman in tech that you've never had a real conversation with. That last one landed differently now. There were photographs, board meetings, charity galas in which she stood slightly apart from the group, smiling the controlled smile, the one she took back before it finished. There was one photograph buried deep in an older article of her at some kind of industry event, standing beside a man identified only as a former business partner. She was laughing in the photo, genuinely laughing, head tilted back, completely unguarded. He studied that photograph for a moment. Then he scrolled down and found the rest of the story. The former business partner's name was Donovan Price. They had been together for 3 years professionally and personally. He had been a co-investor in one of Hale Industries' early ventures. 2 years into their relationship, it emerged that he had been quietly transferring company shares into shell accounts he controlled, manipulating internal documents to cover the trail. The legal battle had been settled out of court. The details were sealed. The business press covered it primarily as a corporate fraud story. Nobody apparently had bothered to write about what it had done to the woman behind the company. James closed the laptop. He sat with the weight of what he'd just read. Not the numbers. Not the acquisition or the Forbes list or the billion-dollar empire. The other part. The part that explained, put people behind doors and closed them in a way that made his chest hurt. She hadn't just been betrayed by someone she worked with. She had been betrayed by someone she'd trusted completely, someone she had let pass the walls, someone who had looked at everything she'd built and seen only what he could take from it. James thought about the restaurant, about the way she'd watched him the whole night, not suspiciously, but carefully. The way she measured every word before she said it. The way she almost smiled and then caught herself as if smiling was something that had cost her something once, and she was still paying the debt. He thought about a 7-year-old girl who asked if someone was going to be her new mommy. He thought about a woman who had stopped expecting anyone to show up for her at all. He picked up his phone. He stared at it for a full minute. Then he called Kevin. "I need you to do something for me," he said when Kevin picked up. "Good afternoon to you too." "The woman from the restaurant," James said. "Vivian Hale. Do you know anything about Hale Industries?" A pause. "The tech company. They're huge. Why?" She was the woman at the table. Dead silence. "Kevin, I'm here," Kevin said in a voice that had gone completely flat with shock. "I'm just James. Vivian Hale sat at your table." "I sat at her table, by accident." "Vivian Hale, as in the Vivian Hale, the billionaire." "I apparently didn't know that at the time, yes. She's worth like she just bought a tech company for $4 billion. 4.3. $4.3 billion, James. Kevin, I need you to lower your voice. We are at work. You had tiramisu with a woman worth $4 billion and then walked home and went to bed. I took the L. James. I didn't know, he said. That's my point. I didn't know. She didn't tell me. We just talked, like two people. Like a completely normal conversation between two people who had never met. Kevin was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, the excitement had shifted into something more thoughtful. She didn't tell you? No. She sat across from you for 2 hours and didn't mention it. No. And you never asked what she did. It felt rude. Another pause. Do you know what that means? Kevin said. It means I'm polite. It means she wanted one night where nobody knew, Kevin said. One night where she was just a person. James didn't answer. James, Kevin said quietly. That's not nothing. I know, James said. He hung up. He sat at his desk for a long time staring at the phone in his hand. Then he opened a new browser window and searched for a contact form for Hale Industries. He stared at it, closed it, opened it again, typed 3 words in the message field, deleted them, typed 4 different things, deleted those too, thought about what Kevin said. That's not nothing. Thought about did you ever finish telling your story. He stopped typing. Because that was it. That was the only thing that was true, and the only thing that wasn't going to sound like everything she'd probably heard before I saw you on the news. I looked you up. I know who you are now, and he did not want to be another version of that story. He wanted to be the version where the question was simple, the version where it was only about her. He found a general inquiry email for Hale Industries' Chicago office. He wrote 4 sentences. He read them back. He changed 2 words. He read them again. Then he hit send before he could talk himself out of it. Vivian's Monday started at 5:45 with a briefing from her executive assistant Rachel, who appeared in her home office doorway exactly on time, holding a tablet, a coffee, and the specific expression she wore when there were things on the agenda that required careful handling. Data sync integration call at 7, Rachel began. Board pre-read needs your edits by 9. The Pearson Group wants a response on the San Francisco property by end of day. And, she paused just briefly enough that Vivian looked up from her desk. And, Vivian said. Rachel held out the tablet with a very neutral face. There's an email in the general inquiry inbox that legal flagged as unusual. They didn't know what to do with it, so they forwarded it to me. Vivian took the tablet. The email was from a James Caldwell. The subject line read, "You don't know me, or maybe you do." She stared at the subject line for a moment. Then she read the body. Ms. Hale, I'm not sure if you remember me. I sat at your table at Meridian Restaurant last Friday by accident. You let me stay, and we talked for 2 hours, and you laughed once and looked surprised about it. I saw you on the news this morning. I realize now you had every reason not to tell me who you were, and I understand why you didn't. I only have one question. Did you ever get to finish your story? J. Caldwell. Rachel was watching her with the careful neutrality of a woman who had worked for Vivian for 4 years and had learned to read her silences the way a sailor reads weather. Vivian read the email twice. Then she set the tablet down. Rachel, she said. Yes. Clear my 8 o'clock. Rachel blinked. The Pearson call. The 9 o'clock Pearson call. Clear it. Move it to 11. Of course. Rachel made a note. Then carefully, should legal respond to the email? No, Vivian said. She pulled the tablet back toward her and typed a response herself. 8 words. She read them back. Then she sent it. Rachel watched her set the tablet face down on the desk and pick up her coffee like nothing had happened. Anything else? Rachel asked. Get me the data sync preliminary numbers before the 7 o'clock call, Vivian said. And Rachel, yes. Nobody reads my personal inquiry responses. Not legal, not you. If something comes into that inbox with my name on it, it comes directly to me first. Clear. Rachel studied her employer for one careful second, then, completely clear. She left. Vivian sat alone in her office. She picked up the tablet, read her 8 words again. I thought you'd never ask. Call me. V. She set it down, picked up her actual phone, put it back, picked it up again. Outside her window, Chicago moved traffic, early light the distant sound of the city adjusting itself for the week. She had a board call in 70 minutes. She had a $4.3 billion acquisition to integrate. She had a legal team and a PR team and an executive team, all of whom needed something from her before noon. She had built an entire empire on the principle that she did not make decisions without complete information. She had sent that email with almost no information at all. She thought about a man who'd sat down across from her, apologized for being late, and spent 2 hours talking about blueberry pancakes and a daughter named Amara and a dead wife he kept present in every room like a lantern he refused to put out. She thought about the moment she'd almost corrected him when he'd walked up, said, "Sorry, I'm late," and she'd understood immediately that he'd made a mistake. She'd opened her mouth, and then something had stopped her. She still couldn't name it exactly. Something about the way he'd looked, not at her wealth, not at her face in the calculating way she'd grown used to, but at her as if she were simply a person sitting alone at a table, and he'd come to sit across from her. She had let him stay. She hadn't planned it. She hadn't waited. She had just let it happen. And it had felt like taking off shoes she'd been wearing for years. Her phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize. Chicago area code. She stared at it. Let it ring once, twice, picked up. "You called fast," she said. A pause. Then James Caldwell's voice, the same as she remembered it. Unhurried, slightly careful, like a man who chose his words the way some people choose roads. Not the fastest one, the right one. "I wasn't going to call," he said. And then I decided that was a stupid reason not to. "What was?" "Being scared," he said simply. She didn't answer immediately. "I looked you up," he said, "after the news segment. I want you to know that. I don't want to pretend I didn't." "What did you find?" "A lot," he said. "The company, the acquisition, the Forbes list." A pause. "The other stuff too. The legal situation a few years back. What I could find anyway." The silence that followed was not comfortable. But it was not the silence of a conversation ending. It was the silence of something being laid down between two people, carefully, deliberately, because it mattered. "And," she said, "and I thought—" He stopped, started again. "I thought about how you said you'd learned to put people behind doors and close them, and I thought I understood that a lot better after I read what happened." Vivian was quiet. "I'm not calling because of any of that," he said. "I want to be clear about that. I'm not calling because you're on the Forbes list, or because you just bought a company, or because I'm not calling for any of that. I'm calling because you didn't get to finish what you were saying. At the restaurant." Another pause. "About not knowing how to keep someone present after they're gone. You stopped. I let you stop because it felt like the right thing to do. But I've been thinking about it since." "You've been thinking about an unfinished sentence," she said. "I've been thinking about the person who said it," he corrected. Silence. "That's a very deliberate thing to say," she said finally. "I'm a deliberate person," he said. "Most of the time. Sometimes I accidentally sit at the wrong table, but mostly deliberate." She almost laughed. She caught it just before it arrived. He noticed. She could tell he noticed even through the phone because he went quiet for half a second in the specific way he had, like he was making a note of something. "Vivian," he said. "Yes. I'm not going to pretend I know what your life looks like. I looked up your company, I read a few articles, and I still don't. I can't imagine the weight of all that. But I'm also not going to act different than I did at the restaurant, because that's all I know how to do. I'm a logistics coordinator from Cincinnati who makes bad lemon chicken and has a daughter who corrects my grammar. That's what you'd be talking to. Not anything more impressive than that." She sat very still. In 4 years since Donovan Price, not a single man had opened a conversation with her by making himself smaller. Every one of them had started with what they had, what they'd done, what they could offer. Every one of them had looked at her the way you look at something you want to prove you're worth standing next to. James Caldwell had just listed his failures and offered them to her like they were the most honest things he had. "I have a board call in an hour," she said. "Then I won't keep you." "After the call," she said, "I have a 90-minute window. I usually eat lunch at my desk." A pause. "That sounds lonely," he said. It was the exact right thing to say. She didn't know how he kept doing that. "It is," she said. "Sometimes." "There's a diner on West Randolph," he said. "Formica tables, bad lighting. The coffee is genuinely terrible. Amara would call it a sad coffee." "That sounds horrible." "It's honest," he said. "No one's going to recognize you there. No cameras. No whatever your normal world looks like. Just a diner." She turned her chair toward the window. The city was fully awake now, moving at speed, carrying all its weight and noise and forward motion. "I don't usually do things like this," she said. "I know," he said. "I don't—" She stopped. "The last time I trusted someone, he spent 2 years stealing from me." "I know that too," he said quietly. "I read the article." "And you still called." "I called because I thought you deserved someone who called after knowing," he said. "Not someone who called and then found out and disappeared. I'd rather you know I know, so there's nothing to find out later." The room was very quiet. "West Randolph," she said. "The diner is called Lou's. It has a green awning. You cannot miss it unless you're trying very hard." "I'll find it," she said. "I know you will," he said. And there was something in his voice, not flattery, not performance, just a plain, grounded certainty, like he meant it in the most simple way possible. She hung up, sat for a moment. Then she buzzed Rachel. "Push the 11 o'clock Pearson call to 2, she said. A pause. "Of course. Anything else?" "Yes," Vivian said. "I'll be out for lunch, approximately 90 minutes. Hold everything that can be held." Another pause, slightly longer this time. "Understood." Vivian released the intercom. She looked at the tablet on her desk. The email. The 8 words she had sent without calculating the risk. She thought about the last time she had done something without calculating the risk. She thought about the photograph, the one from the industry event herself, laughing with Donovan completely unguarded. She had not looked like that in 3 years. She was not sure she still knew how to look like that. She thought about a man who'd accidentally sat at her table and spent 2 hours telling her that his wife was still in every room he walked into. She thought about what it would feel like to not put the smile away before it finished. The board call started in 48 minutes. She opened her briefing notes, but her hands again were not quite steady. And this time, she didn't try to make them be. Lou's diner on West Randolph was exactly as terrible as James had described. The lighting was the yellowish kind that made everyone look like they'd slept badly. The tables were small, the menus were laminated, and one of them was slightly sticky. The coffee arrived in a mug that had clearly lived a long and difficult life. Vivian sat across from James Caldwell in her lunch break. No Rachel, no security detail. No one who knew where she was, except a text she'd sent to her driver, and wrapped both hands around the bad coffee and looked at the man across from her. He looked the same as the restaurant, relaxed in the specific way of a person who has stopped performing casualness and simply is casual. He was wearing a button-down that he'd rolled to the elbows. He had a small scar on his left hand that she hadn't noticed before. "You actually came," he said. "I said I would." A lot of people say things. "I know," she said. "That's why I try to only say things I mean." He nodded, picked up his coffee, made a face. "This is genuinely bad coffee," she said. "I told you." "You did." She took another sip anyway. "Why do you come here?" "Because it's honest," he said again. She looked at him over the rim of the mug. "You use that word a lot." "It matters to me," he said. "Probably more than it matters to most people." He set down his cup. Renee was sick for 14 months before she died. And in those 14 months, I had a lot of conversations with a lot of doctors and nurses and hospice counselors, and the people I trusted most were the ones who told me the truth, even when the truth was hard. The ones who said, "I don't know," instead of guessing. The ones who said, "This is going to be very hard," instead of "everything will be okay." I've had a low tolerance for pretending ever since. Vivian was quiet. "That's a painful way to develop a preference," she said. "Most real preferences are," he said. She looked down at the table. "The man who stole from me," she said. It came out steadier than she expected. "He was very good at honesty. That's what made it so damaging. He had a specific kind of honesty, the kind that tells you true things in order to make you trust him enough to miss the lies." James didn't respond immediately. "There's a word for that," he said finally. "Manipulation." "Yeah." "I spent a year after it happened going back through every conversation we'd ever had," she said, looking for the moment I should have seen it. "I couldn't find it, and I couldn't figure out whether that meant I was stupid or he was just very good." She paused. "I eventually decided it didn't matter. The outcome was the same." "You're not stupid," James said. "You don't know me well enough to say that. I know you built a $4 billion company by 29, he said. "Stupid doesn't do that." "Smart people get deceived all the time," she said. "Intelligence isn't armor." "No," he agreed. "It isn't." He paused. "But it also doesn't mean you can't trust again. It just means the cost of the last time was real." She looked at him. He looked back at her. Neither of them said anything for a moment. Then Vivian Hale, who had not cried in front of another person in 3 years, who had learned to process everything alone and in private, who had built entire systems of emotional infrastructure specifically designed to prevent this exact kind of unguarded moment, felt something shift way down beneath all of it, like a door that had been locked for a very long time. She didn't cry. She was not there yet. But something moved. "Finish your story," James said quietly. "The one from Friday. You were telling me about keeping people present. And you said you'd learn to do the opposite." She looked at her coffee. "I had someone," she said slowly. "Before Donovan. Before any of it. My father. He died when I was 26. He was the person who—" She stopped. "He was the person who believed I could build something real before I believed it myself. And when he died, I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to keep him present. I only knew how to keep working. Because working was the thing he taught me, and as long as I was building what he believed in, I could pretend he was still watching." She paused. "But that's not the same thing," she said, "as what you described with Renee. That's not keeping someone in the room. That's just running fast enough that you don't have time to notice they're gone." The diner hummed around them. The bad coffee cooled in their mugs. "No," James said gently. "It's not the same thing." He paused. "But it's not nothing either. You built the thing he believed in. That matters." She looked up at him. "He would have liked you," she said, and then looked immediately surprised that she'd said it as if the sentence had arrived before she could review it. James smiled. The big whole-face one she'd seen at the restaurant. The one that made him look somehow like the most unguarded person in any room he was in. "Good," he said. "I'd have liked to meet him." And Vivian Hale, sitting in a bad-lit diner with a terrible cup of coffee, let the smile come. All the way this time. She did not take it back. The smile stayed for 11 seconds. James counted not because he was keeping score, but because he understood instinctively that it mattered that 11 seconds of an unguarded smile from Vivian Hale was not a small thing. It was the kind of thing that cost her something, and she'd spent it anyway, and he wanted to honor that by noticing it fully. Then her phone buzzed on the table between them. She looked at it. The smile didn't disappear exactly. It just receded the way a tide pulls back from shore. Her face rearranged itself into something more composed, and the woman who had been sitting across from him in a bad-lit diner with her hands wrapped around terrible coffee became in the space of about 2 seconds. The woman who appeared on business news segments and stood at podiums and answered reporters' questions in 3 sentences and took no further questions. "I have to go," she said. "Board meeting. Legal call," she said, already reaching for her coat. "The data sync integration. There's a liability question that apparently can't wait 90 minutes. She paused, coat half on, and looked at him. "I'm sorry." "Don't apologize," he said. "You came. You finished your story. That's what mattered." She studied him for a moment. That careful measuring look she had, the one that felt like she was searching for the angle, the hidden motive, the place where the thing he'd just said stopped being true. She didn't find one. "James," she said. "Yeah. Next Saturday." She said it quickly, like she was committing before she could reconsider. "You mentioned blueberry pancakes." He looked at her. "I did. Amara puts chocolate chips in hers." "She does. I've never had blueberry pancakes with chocolate chips," Vivian said, and her voice was careful and controlled. But underneath it, underneath all of it, something was asking. Not for pancakes. For the ordinary life that pancakes represented. For a Saturday morning that didn't start with a briefing from Rachel, and a tablet full of decisions that needed to be made before the city finished waking up. "Saturday morning," James said. 9 o'clock. I'll warn Amara." "Warn her. She's going to have opinions about you," he said. "She has opinions about everything. It's best to know going in." Vivian pulled her coat straight. "I have run board meetings with 12 executives who all had conflicting agendas." "You haven't met Amara," he said. Something crossed her face, not the almost smile. Something warmer and more complicated than that. Something that looked, if you caught it at exactly the right angle, like hope. She left $12 on the table for 2 coffees that cost $6. James didn't say anything about it. He watched her walk out the door and back into her world, and he sat with his bad coffee and thought about a woman who had learned to run fast enough that she didn't have time to notice who was gone. He thought about Saturday. He thought about Amara's face when he told her they were having a guest. He finished his coffee. It really was terrible. He didn't mind at all. He told Amara on Thursday. He'd been rehearsing it in his head since Tuesday, not the words exactly, but the order of them, the way to frame it, so that a 7-year-old, who asked every hard question directly and without mercy, would receive the information without immediately constructing an elaborate narrative around it. He failed at this. He said, "Amara, we're having a friend over for pancakes Saturday." And Amara looked up from the book she was reading, a chapter book about a girl detective that she'd already read twice, and said without missing a beat, "Is this the date, lady?" James set down his spatula. "You've been weird since Monday," she said, with the authority of someone who had been observing him for 7 years and considered herself an expert. "The good kind of weird, not the sad kind. The last time you were good weird was when the Cubs won, and Kevin came over and you both yelled at the TV. This is different from the Cubs winning." "I know," she said. "Her name is Vivian. Mrs. Patterson told me." He stared at his daughter. "Mrs. Patterson doesn't know about Vivian." "Kevin told Mrs. Patterson." He was absolutely going to have a conversation with Kevin. A long one. "She's a friend," he said carefully. "We met by accident. He stopped because how exactly did you explain Vivian Hale to a 7-year-old? She works hard, and she doesn't have a lot of people who make her feel normal. And Saturday mornings feel pretty normal to us. So I thought it might be nice to share one." Amara considered this with the gravity it deserved. "Does she like chocolate chips?" "I don't know," he said honestly. "I'll find out," Amara said, and went back to her book with the air of someone who had filed the relevant information and would deploy it at the appropriate moment. James stood in the kitchen for a moment. "Amara," he said. She looked up. "She's been through some hard things," he said. "So if she seems quiet or careful, that's just her. It doesn't mean she doesn't want to be here." Amara looked at him with her mother's eyes, that specific steady patience that had always made him feel like he was being seen more clearly than he was prepared for. "Daddy," she said gently, "I know what careful looks like. You were careful for a really long time." He didn't have an answer for that. "I'll be nice," she said, and returned to her book. He went back to cooking dinner. He blinked a few more times than usual. Saturday came in the way of Chicago summer. Saturdays warm already by 8, the neighborhood alive with lawn mowers and passing cars, and someone 2 houses down playing old Stevie Wonder from an open window. James had been up since 6:30. He told himself it was because he always got up at 6:30. He had cleaned the kitchen twice by 8:15, which was not something he always did. He was on his second cup of coffee when Amara appeared in the doorway in her pajamas, assessed the situation. The clean counter, the arranged mixing bowls, the fact that he was wearing an actual collared shirt instead of his regular Saturday sweatshirt, and said, "She's coming at 9, Daddy. It's 8:20. "I know what time it is." "You're wearing the blue shirt." "It's a shirt. You only wear the blue shirt when something matters," she said wisely, and climbed onto the kitchen stool to watch him the way she watched cooking videos on his phone with intense analytical focus. "Do you want to help with the batter?" he said. "Yes," she said. "But I'm in charge of the chocolate chips." "You're always in charge of the chocolate chips." "Because if I'm not, you put in too few," she said. "The correct amount is more than you think." He handed her the bag. At 8:58, the doorbell rang. Amara slid off the stool so fast she nearly knocked over the measuring cup. "I'll get it," James started. She was already at the door. He heard it open. A pause. Then Amara's voice clear and direct and entirely without self-consciousness. "Are you Vivian?" And Vivian's voice slightly surprised. "I am." "I'm Amara. Do you like chocolate chips?" A beat. "I've never tried them in pancakes," Vivian said. "That's okay," Amara said with great magnanimity. "Today you will. Come in." James appeared in the hallway just in time to see his 7-year-old step back and hold the door open with the confident hospitality of someone receiving a guest at a state dinner. Vivian stepped inside wearing jeans, actual jeans, which James registered with a small private relief, and a simple dark top, her hair down, no jewelry, except small gold earrings. She looked different from Lou's Diner. She looked different from Meridian. She looked different from the woman on the business news segment. She looked, James thought, like someone who had worked very hard to show up as herself and wasn't entirely sure how it fit yet. Their eyes met over Amara's head. "Hi," he said. "Hi," she said. Amara looked between them. "The batter's ready," she announced. "We should go cook." The next 2 hours were the most unscripted thing Vivian had done in years. Amara put her to work immediately, handing her a spatula with the expectation that she would know what to do with it, which she did not, because Vivian Hale had not flipped a pancake in her adult life, and possibly not in her childhood either. Amara watched her first attempt with a look of polite concern. James watched from the other side of the stove with an expression he was working very hard to keep neutral. "You flipped too early," Amara said. "I can see that," Vivian said. "You have to wait for the bubbles," Amara said. "When the bubbles come, then you flip. If you flip before the bubbles, it falls apart." She demonstrated on the next one, quick, confident, perfect. Then she handed the spatula back. "Now you try." Vivian waited for the bubbles. She flipped it. It was not perfect, but it held together. "Better," Amara said approvingly. James set plates on the table and said nothing. He was afraid that if he said anything, this moment would end, and he wanted it to keep going. Vivian at his stove listening to his daughter explain bubble theory with the same focused attention she probably gave to board presentations. Amara completely unintimidated, completely herself, correcting the pancake technique of a billionaire with the calm authority of a child who had never learned to be impressed by things that didn't matter. It was the most ordinary Saturday morning he'd had in a long time. It felt extraordinary. They sat at the kitchen table with plates of uneven chocolate-chipped blueberry pancakes, and Amara poured syrup with deep personal investment in the precise quantity, and Vivian tasted the first bite and went quiet. "Well," Amara said. "This is," Vivian said slowly, Genuinely the best thing I've eaten in months. Amara looked at James. I told you the chocolate chips were the right amount. You did, he agreed. You were right. I'm usually right, Amara said, and went back to her pancakes. Vivian looked at James across the table. He looked back. There was something in the air between them that didn't need language. A shared recognition, quiet and private, that this moment was real in a way that very few moments managed to be. Tell me something, Vivian said to Amara. What's your favorite subject in school? Amara considered this seriously. Science, she said, because science is true. You do an experiment and you find out what's actually real. You can't argue with what's real. Vivian went very still. That's a very sophisticated perspective, she said. Amara shrugged. My teacher says I think too much. But Daddy says there's no such thing as thinking too much, just thinking about the wrong things. Your daddy's right, Vivian said. Amara looked at her. Do you think too much? Yes, Vivian said. About the wrong things sometimes. What are the right things to think about? Amara asked. Vivian opened her mouth, closed it. The question had landed somewhere she hadn't prepared for in the way that children's questions often did, direct, clean-cutting straight to the place adults spent years insulating against. I'm still figuring that out, she said honestly. Amara nodded, satisfied. Me too, she said. That's okay. Daddy says figuring out is the good part. James looked at his plate. He was doing the blinking thing again. After breakfast, Amara announced that they were going to the park and that this was not negotiable. James had learned years ago not to argue with announcements delivered in that tone. He looked at Vivian. You don't have to, he began. I want to, she said, and she meant it. He could tell the difference now, the things she said because they were required, and the things she said because they were true. She had a different quality when she was telling the truth. Something loosened fractionally around her eyes. The park was 4 blocks away. Amara walked between them at first, then ahead of them because there was a specific bench she liked, and she wanted to claim it before anyone else did, which left James and Vivian walking side by side on a Saturday morning in a neighborhood that smelled like cut grass and someone's backyard barbecue. She's extraordinary, Vivian said. She is, he agreed. She gets it from her mother. Renee had the same directness. No filter between what she thought and what she said. It was terrifying and wonderful. You're raising her the same way. I'm trying, he said. Some days I think I'm doing okay. Other days she corrects my grammar at dinner, and I question every choice I've ever made. Vivian laughed, a real one, not the short, startled kind. A fuller one. It arrived and stayed. He looked at her sideways without making it obvious. You laughed, he said. I know. You didn't take it back. She looked straight ahead. I'm practicing, she said quietly. He didn't push it. They walked. Ahead of them, Amara had reached the bench and was sitting on it with Gerald the elephant observing the park with the focused surveillance of a 7-year-old, determining where the action was. Can I ask you something? James said. You can always ask, she said. I might not answer. Fair enough. He paused. After everything that happened, price, the legal situation, the time it cost you, the personal cost of it, did you ever think about stepping back from the company, from all of it? She was quiet for a moment. They walked past a family with a stroller, a man walking a dog, a kid on a bicycle too small for him. Every day for about 6 months, she said. I used to sit in board meetings and think I built this, every piece of it, and someone who said he loved me used it against me. And I'd think, what is the point of building anything if the thing you build just becomes a target? But you didn't step back. No. What stopped you? She thought about this. My father, she said. Not his memory exactly. More like his voice. He used to say that the world will always have people who want to take what you've built. That's not a reason to stop building. That's a reason to build something so solid that the taking doesn't reach the foundation." She paused. "He said it about business, but I think he meant something bigger." "He meant you," James said. "Build yourself that solid." She looked at him sharply. "He meant to build yourself so solid that what people take doesn't reach your foundation," James said. He was talking about the company because that's what you were working on at the time, but the principle that was about you. Vivian stopped walking. James stopped too. She was looking at him with an expression he hadn't seen before, not the composure, not the almost smile, not the careful measurement. Something that was right at the surface, close to breaking through. "I never thought of it that way," she said. "Sometimes the people who know us best tell us things that take a while to arrive," he said. "Renee told me once when she was sick, she said, 'James, you are the most capable person I know, and you spend half your energy pretending you're not, because you don't want anyone to expect too much of you.' I thought about that for 2 years before I understood what she meant. And now I try," he said. "Not perfectly, but I try." Vivian looked away, toward Amara, who had relocated from the bench to a patch of grass where she was now conducting what appeared to be a very serious examination of something she'd found in the ground. "She found a bug," James said. "She's studying it," Vivian said. "She studies everything." "So do I," Vivian said. And then quieter. "It's just that the things I study are usually balance sheets." "Maybe that's changing," he said. She didn't answer, but she didn't deny it either. Shirts. 3 weeks passed. They didn't call it anything. That was an agreement they didn't make out loud. But both understood no labels, no forward motion, faster than felt true, no performance of something they weren't sure they were yet. James had enough experience with real grief to know that rushing things was just another way of not honoring them. And Vivian had enough experience with calculated relationships to distrust anything that moved too quickly toward a definition. So they just continued. Lou's diner on Tuesdays, the park on Saturdays when Amara would tolerate having company, which was most Saturdays, because Amara had within 2 weeks decided that Vivian was acceptable and filed her in the category of people we keep, which James knew was his daughter's highest honor. Vivian came to the pancakes 3 weeks in a row. By the 3rd week, she was managing the bubble timing on her own without needing to be reminded. Amara observed this improvement with professional satisfaction. "You're getting better," she told Vivian. "I had a good teacher," Vivian said. "You did," Amara agreed. James kept his face completely neutral and refilled everyone's orange juice. But things were also complicated. In the way that things become complicated when 2 people from very different worlds try to occupy the same space without anyone getting hurt. The first time it surfaced, they were at Lou's, and Vivian got a call she couldn't ignore. She took it outside, and James watched through the window as she paced the sidewalk, phone pressed to her ear. Her posture shifting back into the boardroom version of herself, straight, sharp, impenetrable. She was out there for 11 minutes. When she came back, she sat down and said, "I'm sorry," and picked up her coffee. "What happened?" he said. "San Francisco deal fell through. My CFO is handling it, but—" She stopped. "But he needed me to weigh in on how to respond to their legal team." She set the mug down. "It's fine. It's handled." "But you're still in it," he said. She looked at him. "What do you mean?" "You're still sitting in it," he said. "The decision. You answered his question, but your mind is still in that room. I can see it." She opened her mouth, closed it. "Is that—" She paused. "Does that bother you?" "No," he said. "It doesn't bother me. I'm just telling you I see it." He leaned forward slightly. "You don't have to perform being off duty with me, Vivian. If your brain is still in the meeting, that's okay. We can sit in that. You don't have to pretend it's somewhere else." She stared at him. "Renee used to do that," he said. "When she had a bad day at work, she was a social worker, so her bad days were genuinely bad. She'd come home, and I could see it on her, the whole weight of what she'd been carrying all day, and she'd try to set it down at the door. And sometimes she could. But sometimes she couldn't, and I learned the hard way that asking her to set it down before she was ready just made her feel like she had to perform recovery she didn't have yet. Vivian was very still. "So what did you do?" she said. "I asked her about it," he said. "The work, the case, whatever was weighing on her. Not because I could fix it, but because carrying something alone is heavier than carrying it with someone who's not going to try to take it away from you." She looked at him for a long time. "The San Francisco deal," she said slowly. "It was a property acquisition, commercial real estate adjacent to our Seattle campus. The sellers backed out because they got a better offer from a competitor, and our legal team believes they may have leaked our bid internally, which, if true, is a breach of the NDA they signed and could be worth pursuing legally, but the cost of the litigation versus the value of the property." She stopped. "You don't care about any of this. I care that you're carrying it," he said. "Keep going." She looked at him like he'd said something in a language she was still learning. Then she took a breath, and she kept going. She talked for 22 minutes. The coffee went cold. James listened without interrupting, asked 2 questions, and at the end said nothing at all for a moment. Then, "It sounds like the litigation costs more than it's worth unless you're making a point." "That's exactly the problem," she said. "Because sometimes the point matters." "Does it here?" She thought about it. "Not enough," she said finally. "Not enough to justify it." "Then you already have your answer," he said. "You just needed to hear yourself say it out loud." She looked at the table, then at him. "You're very good at that," she said. "At what?" "Making space for someone to think clearly," she said. "Most people either try to solve your problem or try to take it away. You just stay in it with me." "I have a 7-year-old, he said. "I've learned that staying in it is usually more useful than solving it." She almost said something. He could see her holding it, measuring it, deciding whether it was safe to put down on the table between them. "I haven't had that," she said finally. "Someone who stays in it for a very long time." She paused. "Maybe ever." The diner hummed around them. A table over 2 old men argued about baseball with the easy comfort of people who'd been arguing about the same thing for decades. The bad coffee sent up a thin curl of steam. "I know," he said gently. "I can tell." "Is it that obvious?" "Only because I've been paying attention," he said. She looked at him with an expression he was beginning to understand, not the full smile, not yet, but the thing that came before it. The moment just before she decided to trust the feeling. "James," she said. "Yeah, I don't know how to do this," she said. "I want to be honest with you about that. I don't know how to let someone see the whole thing. The work and the mess and the parts that aren't composed. I've been managing what people see of me for so long that I'm not entirely sure what's left underneath when I stop managing it." "That's not a problem," he said. "It feels like one." "It's not," he said. "Because you don't have to know what's underneath all at once. That's not how it works. You just stop managing a little bit at a time and you find out what's there as you go." He paused. "Amara does this thing when she's learning something new. She doesn't try to do the whole thing right the first time. She just does the first step, and then the second one, and she's not embarrassed that she doesn't already know all of it, because she understands that knowing it comes from doing it, not the other way around." "7-year-olds are wiser than the rest of us," Vivian said. "Continuously," he agreed. She looked at him. Something settled in her expression, not resolution exactly, but something close to it. Like a question she'd been holding for a long time was starting to relax its grip. "Okay," she said. "Okay. Okay," she said again. "A little bit at a time." The thing James hadn't accounted for was the world outside Lou's diner. He could manage his world, his apartment, the park. Saturday pancakes. Those were his. He controlled the variables. But Vivian's world had different variables, and they were significantly less manageable. The first indication came from Kevin, of all people, who showed up at James's desk on a Thursday morning with his phone face out and an expression that mixed excitement with something more careful. "Have you seen this?" Kevin said. He turned the phone around. It was a photograph, taken in the park, the one 4 blocks from James's apartment, the one they went to on Saturdays. It showed 2 people walking side by side. The angle was from behind and slightly to the left. James in the gray jacket he'd been wearing last Saturday, and Vivian beside him, her hair down. The caption below it read, "Vivian Hale, CEO of Hale Industries, spotted in Chicago's Lincoln Square neighborhood with unidentified companion." Sources close to the company note the reclusive executive has been seen in the area on multiple occasions recently. The article was on a business gossip site. It had 400 comments. James sat very still. He read the caption again. "It's not a big deal," Kevin said carefully. "It's not a major outlet, but it's out there. Does she know?" James said. "I don't know. I just saw it 20 minutes ago." James picked up his phone and called her. She picked up on the second ring. "I know," she said, before he could say anything. "Rachel sent it to me at 6 this morning." "Vivian." "I'm not upset about the photograph," she said. "I'm upset that I didn't anticipate it. I should have anticipated it. I got careless." The word landed with weight, like she was angry at herself in a very specific way. "Careless," he repeated. "I stopped thinking about—" She paused. "I stopped thinking about the external picture. I just stopped accounting for it. And now there's a photograph of us in a park and 400 people on the internet speculating about who you are, and I—" Her voice changed slightly, tightened. "I need to think about how to manage this." "Vivian," he said. "James, I have a company. I have a board. I have investors who—" "Vivian," he said again, quiet and firm. "Stop." She stopped. "I understand," he said. "I understand this is complicated for you in ways it isn't for me. I know your world doesn't work the way mine does. But I need you to hear me right now before you go into management mode." A pause. "I'm listening," she said. "I'm not asking you to make any decisions right now," he said. "I'm not asking you to go public or make a statement or manage anything. I want to know that you're okay. Not the CEO. You. Are you okay?" A silence. Longer than the others. "I don't know," she said. And the honesty of it, the unmanaged, straight-up admission that she didn't know, told him that she was still in it with him, even with the photograph and the article and the 400 comments and Rachel and the board and all the rest of it. "That's okay," he said. "You don't have to know yet." She exhaled, long, slow. "The photograph is bad," she said. "Not because of you, because of me, because my name is attached to this company and my personal life has always been—" She paused. "The last time my personal life intersected with my professional world, I lost a significant amount of money and 2 years of momentum and a person I thought I knew." "This is different," he said. "I know that," she said. "James, I know that. But knowing it here—" A pause. "Doesn't always reach here." She didn't say the words for head and heart. She didn't need to. He understood the geography she was describing. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Yes." "If the photograph didn't exist, if no one had taken it, if it were just you and me and Amara and Saturday mornings, would you still be scared?" A long pause. "Yes," she said finally, "but it would be a different kind of scared. A better kind. A more honest kind," she said. "This kind has the photograph in it, and all the history that comes with being photographed." "Okay," he said. "So we deal with the photograph, and then we get back to the honest kind." Another silence. "James," she said. "Yeah. You are an extraordinarily stable person." "I have a 7-year-old, he said. "Stable is survival." She laughed. "The real one. The fuller one that had started showing up in the last 3 weeks more consistently." "Tuesday," he said. "Lose. We'll figure out what we need to figure out." "Tuesday," she agreed. He hung up, looked at the phone in his hand for a moment, then at Kevin, who had been standing next to the desk this entire time trying to look like he wasn't listening and failing comprehensively. Not a word. James said. Not a single word. Kevin agreed, backing away with his coffee. James turned back to his desk. The photograph was still on his phone screen, two people walking side by side in a park, a gray jacket, dark hair, the ordinary Saturday light. He looked at it for a moment. Then he put the phone face down on his desk. And somewhere on the 38th floor across the city, Vivian Hale sat in her office with Rachel on the other side of the door and the photograph still up on her screen. And she was not thinking about the board or the investors or the data sync integration. She was thinking about a man who had asked before anything else, before strategy or management or external picture, whether she was okay. Not the CEO. Her. She closed the photograph, opened the briefing notes, got to the third line, closed the briefing notes, sat for a moment with her hands flat on the desk. Then she buzzed Rachel. "Cancel my afternoon," she said. A pause. "All of it. All of it," she said. "I need to think." Rachel, who was learning to read the weather, said only, "Of course," and clicked off. Vivian sat in the quiet of her office. And for the first time in 3 years, she let herself think about something that wasn't the company. Really think, not manage, not analyze, not calculate risk. Just think about what she wanted. It was terrifying. It was also, she realized, the most alive she had felt in a very long time. She picked up her phone. Not to call her legal team, not to call Rachel. She typed a text to James. 4 words. "Thank you for staying." She stared at it for a moment, hit send. His response came 40 seconds later. "That's the only thing I know how to do." She set the phone down. And for the second time in her adult life, the first being 11 seconds at a bad diner on West Randolph, Vivian Hale let herself feel something all the way to the end of it, without managing it, without measuring it, without putting it behind a door. She let it stay. All of it. The Tuesday after the photograph, James got to lose first. He was already on his second bad coffee when Vivian walked in, and he knew immediately that something had shifted. Not in the way she carried herself exactly, but in the specific quality of her composure. He had learned by now to read the difference between the composure she wore as armor and the composure she wore when something had genuinely rattled her and she was holding herself together by force of will. This was the second kind. The seams were showing just slightly around her eyes. She sat down across from him, didn't take off her coat. "Tell me," he said. She looked at him. "The board called an informal session yesterday afternoon." He set down his mug. "About the photograph. About my, quote, recent pattern of behavior that raises questions about judgment and focus during a critical integration period." She said the last part in the flat, precise tone of someone reciting language they found personally offensive. 3 board members, the ones who have been on since the early days, Gerald Marsh, Patricia Wu, and Thomas Aiken. What did they say exactly? Gerald opened by expressing concern about external perception. Patricia said she'd been hearing from investors who follow my public profile and had questions. Thomas said... She stopped. Her jaw tightened fractionally. Thomas said that given my history with Donovan Price, the board felt it was their responsibility to flag any situation that could represent a potential conflict of interest or vulnerability. The diner went quiet around James. Not literally, the bacon was still sizzling, the 2 old men were still arguing about baseball at the next table, but internally, everything went very still. "He used Donovan Price," James said. "He used Donovan Price," she confirmed. Her voice was controlled, completely controlled. But underneath it, he could hear the thing she was containing, not anger exactly. Something older and more exhausted than anger. "Vivian," he said. "I'm fine," she said. "You're not fine. You don't have to be fine." She looked at the table. "I handled it. I told them that my personal life is not within the purview of the board's oversight. I told them that my performance metrics and the data sync integration timeline speak for themselves. I told them that using a prior trauma as a reference point for current judgment is not only professionally inappropriate, but personally unacceptable, and that if anyone on the board wish to pursue that line of questioning further, they could take it up with my legal team. Good, James said. Gerald backed down. Patricia apologized. Thomas did not apologize, but he didn't pursue it either. She finally took off her coat. The meeting ended. I went back to my office. I reviewed the data sync numbers for 2 hours, and they're exactly where they should be. She picked up the menu she'd never needed to look at. And then I sat in my car for 40 minutes because I didn't know where to go. James was quiet for a moment. And then you came here, he said. And then I came here, she said. She set the menu down, looked at him directly with those dark, careful eyes that had been watching him since the night at Meridian, always measuring, always slightly guarded, except that right now the guard was down. Not because she'd made a decision to lower it, because she was too tired to keep it all the way up. I need to ask you something, she said. And I need you to answer honestly. Always, he said. Is this worth it? She said. For you. Not for me, I know my own answer. But for you. You have Amara. You have a life that works. You have a routine that is James. Your routine is beautiful, and I mean that without a single trace of condescension. What you've built for that little girl is one of the most solid and loving things I have ever been close to. And I am... She paused. I am asking you to absorb things like board meetings and newspaper photographs and the residue of every bad decision I made before I met you. And I need to know if that's something you're actually prepared for. Not theoretically, actually. James didn't answer right away. He picked up his coffee, drank it, set it down. You know what Renee said to me? He said slowly, when we found out her cancer had spread. When the oncologist said the word stage 4, and we drove home from the hospital in complete silence, and then sat in the parking lot of our apartment building for 20 minutes, because neither of us could figure out how to walk through the door and into the rest of our lives. Vivian didn't speak. She said, James, I need you to decide right now, not in 6 months, not when it gets harder than you thought it would be. Right now. Because if you're going to stay, I need you to stay all the way. And if you're not, if there's any part of you that's going to be somewhere else, then I need you to tell me now so I can figure out how to do this without you. He paused. And I looked at her and I said, Renee, I already decided. I decided the day we got married. The decision doesn't change because the circumstances did. The diner hummed. I'm not comparing what you're dealing with to stage 4 cancer, he said. I'm not doing that. But I am telling you that I understand the question you're actually asking. You're not asking if I can handle a board meeting. You're asking if I'm the kind of person who stays when it costs something. She was very still. And the answer, he said, is yes. That's the only kind of person I know how to be. Something moved across Vivian's face fast and very deep, like a current far below the surface of water. You only know is there because of what it does to the surface. I'm afraid, she said. And the simplicity of it, no qualification, no management of the confession, hit him harder than anything she'd said before. I know, he said. I'm afraid that I'm going to let you all the way in, she said. And then something is going to happen that I couldn't predict or prevent, and I'm going to lose this. And losing this... She stopped. Her voice, for the first time since he'd known her, was unsteady. Just slightly. Just enough. Losing this would be different from anything I've lost before. Because this isn't... She pressed her lips together. This isn't a company. This isn't money. This isn't something I can rebuild. No, he said. It's not. That's a terrifying thing, she said. The most terrifying thing there is, he agreed. She looked at him. He looked back. But, he said, the alternative is staying behind all the doors forever. And I've watched you, Vivian, for 2 months. I've watched what it looks like when you let yourself be in a room with people who aren't asking you for anything. I've watched what happens to your face when Amara hands you a spatula and expects you to know what to do with it. I've watched you eat bad coffee and blueberry pancakes and walk 4 blocks to a park on a Saturday morning like a person who has remembered partway through what it feels like to just be alive. He leaned forward slightly. That woman, the one in the park, the one at the kitchen table, she's not the risk. She's what you're protecting by taking the risk. Vivian pressed her fingers flat against the table, breathed. Okay, she said. Okay. Okay, she said again. And this time it wasn't tentative. It wasn't the a little bit at a time okay from 3 weeks ago. It was something firmer than that. Something that had been decided. The waiter came. They ordered. And James Caldwell and Vivian Hale sat in Lou's diner with its bad coffee and its yellow light and its two old men arguing about baseball, and they ate lunch like two people who had just quietly and without ceremony decided on something important. Jets. The decision, as it turned out, did not make things simpler. It made them realer, which was different. 2 weeks after the board meeting, a financial journalist named Sandra Cho published a piece in a major business publication. It was 3,000 words, and it was titled, "The Other Side of Vivian Hale. Can America's Most Guarded CEO Finally Let Her Guard Down?" It was not cruel. It was actually in places thoughtful. But it included details that could only have come from someone inside Vivian's professional circle. The Lou's Diner visits the Saturday morning absences from her usual schedule. A quote from an unnamed source describing Vivian as distracted in a way we haven't seen before. James read it on his lunch break. He called Vivian immediately. "I saw it," she said. "The source," he said. "Do you know who it is? I have a strong suspicion." Her voice was controlled, but there was an edge underneath it that he recognized now. Not the composed edge she deployed in board meetings, but a sharper, more personal one. "Thomas Aiken." The board member. "He's done this before," she said. "Small leaks, nothing provable, just enough to shape the narrative." A pause. "I've let it go before, because engaging with it gave it more oxygen. I'm deciding whether to do the same now." "What does your gut say?" A long pause. "My gut says this is different, because this isn't about the company. This is about—" She stopped. "Say it," he said. "This is about you," she said, "and Amara, and if he's willing to put that into the press, then he's decided the personal is fair game, which means I need to decide the same thing. What does that look like?" "It looks like I stop letting him define the story," she said. "It looks like I get ahead of it." "How?" A pause. "There's a charity gala," she said. "Hale Foundation, annual event. It's in 6 weeks. Every year I give a brief speech, shake hands, take 3 photographs, and leave in under 90 minutes. It's the one public event I attend that isn't purely business." She paused. "I want you and Amara to come." James went still. "Vivian, not as a statement," she said quickly. "Not as a, I'm not using you and Amara as a press strategy. I want to be clear about that. I'm asking because I want you there. Because it's important to me, and the people in that room are going to see for the first time something that is actually real about my life. And I want it to be real, not managed." She paused. "But I also won't pretend that there isn't a strategic dimension to it. I won't be dishonest with you about that." He appreciated that more than she knew. "Let me talk to Amara," he said. "Of course." "Vivian." "Yes." "For what it's worth," he said. "I think you've been letting him define the story for 3 years, and I think you're right that it's time to stop." She was quiet for a moment. "I need to think about what I'm going to say," she said. "At the gala, in the speech." "What do you normally say?" "Foundation metrics, grant recipients, programmatic outcomes." She said it with the specific flatness of someone describing a routine they've followed for so long it no longer registers as a choice. 50 people in a room who already know everything I'm going to say." "What do you want to say?" he said. A long silence. "Something true," she said. "Then say that," he said. "Whatever the true thing is, say that." He talked to Amara that evening. She was at the kitchen table with her science project, a model of the solar system that had been in various states of completion for 3 weeks, partly because she kept changing her mind about the scale. Amara, he said, sitting across from her. She looked up. She read his face the way she always did, quick complete filing the data. Is something wrong? No, he said. I want to ask you something. Okay. Vivian has a big event in 6 weeks, a fancy dinner. She wants us to come. Amara set down the tiny styrofoam Saturn she was painting. How fancy? Very fancy. People will be dressed up. There will probably be cameras. Cameras like phones or cameras like news? Probably both, he said honestly. Amara thought about this. Will there be food? Almost certainly better food than Lou's Diner. That's not hard, she said. Then, why does she want us there? He looked at his daughter. Because we matter to her, he said. And she wants to be somewhere important with people who matter to her, instead of being alone in a room full of people she doesn't know. Amara picked up Saturn again, turned it in her fingers. She's always alone in rooms full of people, isn't she? It wasn't a question. He answered it anyway. She was, he said. I think that's changing. Amara nodded slowly. Okay, she said. I'll go, but I need a new dress. I figured. And Gerald comes. Gerald the elephant cannot come to a black-tie charity gala, Amara. She gave him the look. The one that suggested he had said something both incorrect and slightly foolish. Gerald goes everywhere important, she said. He can stay in your jacket pocket. James looked at the ceiling for a moment. Fine, he said. Gerald comes. Amara went back to painting, Saturn satisfied. Doug. The 6 weeks between that conversation and the gala were the most honest 6 weeks of James Caldwell's life since the 14 months of Renee's illness. Not because they were easy, they were not easy. The Sandra Cho article had a second wave of pickup. 3 other outlets ran follow-up pieces, each one more speculative than the last. One of them found James's name through his company's public directory and called his office on a Thursday morning asking for comment. He told them he had none hung up and called Vivian to let her know before she heard it from somewhere else. Are you okay? She said. I'm fine, he said. Are you? Rachel is handling it, she said. James? I know, he said. I know, I'm fine. You keep saying you're fine. Because I am, he said. This is not the hard thing. The hard thing was watching someone I loved go through 14 months of chemotherapy. This is people on the internet saying words about me that aren't true. It's uncomfortable. It's not the hard thing. A pause. You use her as your compass, Vivian said quietly. What? Renee, she said. When things get difficult, you go back to her. You measure everything against what you went through with her. And it gives you... She paused. It gives you a very clear sense of what actually matters. He thought about that. Is that a problem? No, she said. It's extraordinary, actually. I've never known anyone who uses grief the way you do. Not as a wound, as a way of knowing what's real. He didn't answer for a moment. She'd have liked you, he said. You said that before. I mean it more now than I did then, he said. Silence. James, she said. Yeah. I want to tell you something, and I need you to let me finish before you say anything. Okay. I have been in this company for 8 years. I have made decisions worth billions of dollars. I have rebuilt from a betrayal that most people told me would finish me professionally. I have been in rooms with some of the most powerful people in this country and held my own in every single one. She paused. And the bravest thing I have done in 8 years, the single bravest thing, is answer your email, the one you sent to the general inquiry inbox, the one that said, "Did you ever get to finish your story?" His chest did something complicated. Because I almost didn't, she said. I read it 4 times and almost deleted it every single time. And the only reason I didn't... Her voice changed just fractionally. The only reason I didn't is because it was the first message I had received in 3 years that wasn't asking me for something. And I was so tired of people asking me for things. "Vivian," he said. "Let me finish," she said. He waited. "I don't know exactly what this is," she said. "I'm still learning what it feels like to not manage it. But I know that it's real, and I know that real things are worth protecting. And I know—" She stopped, started again. "I know that I don't want to go to that gala and stand at that podium and say 50 more words that don't mean anything to anyone in the room, including me. I want to say something true. And the true thing is that this year, for the first time in a very long time, someone sat across from me and treated me like a person. And it changed something, and I want to say that, in front of all of them. Even Thomas Aiken, especially Thomas Aiken." James was quiet for a long moment. "Then say it," he said. "I will," she said. And the steadiness in her voice was a different kind of steadiness from the boardroom kind. It was the kind that came from inside, not from discipline. "I just needed to practice saying it to you first." The gala was on a Saturday. James owned exactly one suit. He'd bought it for a cousin's wedding 3 years ago, and it still fit, which he took as a minor personal victory. Amara wore a dark green dress with small white flowers that she had selected herself after visiting 4 stores with Mrs. Patterson, who had approached the mission with military precision. Gerald the elephant was in James's left jacket pocket, his head just barely visible above the edge. The venue was a hotel ballroom on Michigan Avenue, the kind of space that existed specifically to make people feel the weight of an occasion. Chandeliers, round tables with white linens. More wine glasses per person than James had ever seen. Vivienne had arranged for them to come in through a side entrance to avoid the press line at the front. She met them in a private anteroom off the main corridor, already in the dark navy gown she would wear all evening, her hair up the small gold earrings she always wore when she was being herself rather than performing. She looked at James. He looked at her. "You look," he started. "Don't," she said, but she was already almost smiling. Then she looked down at Amara. Amara looked back at her with complete candor. "You look like a princess," she said, "but the kind that runs things, not the kind that waits around." Vivian crouched down to Amara's level. "That is the best thing anyone has said to me all year." "It's true," Amara said simply. "Is there food yet?" "There will be," Vivian said. "Are you okay to sit at our table for a little while? I have to go do the thing at the podium first." "The speech," Amara said. "Yes." "Are you nervous?" Vivian looked at her. "Yes," she said honestly. "Daddy says you should feel your feet on the floor when you're nervous," Amara said. "He says it reminds you that you're still standing." Vivian glanced up at James over Amara's head. He shrugged. "She's right," he said. "It works." Vivian stood. Looked at him for a moment. Not the composed look, not the careful one. The one he'd come to understand was the most honest version of her face, the one that arrived when she'd stopped calculating. "Stay where I can see you," she said quietly. "When I'm up there. I need—" She stopped. "I just need to be able to look at something real." "We'll be right there," he said. She nodded once, went through the door into the ballroom. The room held 240 people. James sat at the table Vivian had arranged for them near the front, but not center, slightly to the left of the podium. Amara sat beside him, Gerald discreetly in his pocket, taking in the room with the systematic curiosity she brought to every new environment. Kevin had asked to come, and James had said no, this wasn't a spectator event, and Kevin had said fair enough, with admirable restraint. The dinner moved through its stages. The program began. 2 grant recipients spoke a community health organization, an education nonprofit. And Vivian sat at the head table, listening with complete attention, asking a quiet question of the woman next to her, nodding at the right moments. She was good at this. James had always known that intellectually. But watching it, watching the way she held a room just by being in it, the particular quality of authority that she wore the way other people wore skin. He understood it differently now. It wasn't performed. It was entirely and specifically her. The same woman who waited for the bubbles before she flipped the pancake, who had let a laugh escape, and looked surprised about it, who had typed 8 words and hit send before she could talk herself out of it. The same woman, just in every version of herself at once. The MC announced her name. She stood. The room applauded. She walked to the podium. She placed her notes on the surface in front of her. She looked out at the room. James watched her find them, him and Amara left of center front third. Her eyes landed there and stayed for a half second, then moved on to the rest of the room, then came back. She looked down at her notes. Back up. Took a breath. Felt her feet on the floor, he thought. He could see the slight shift in her posture, the way she settled deliberately into the ground beneath her. She opened her mouth, and then she set her notes aside. The room shifted slightly, the small collective awareness of an audience that has noticed something deviate from the expected. I was going to stand up here, she said, and tell you about our programmatic outcomes for the year. The numbers are strong. Rachel will make sure they're in your packets on the way out. A pause. But I'm going to say something else instead. The room was very quiet. 3 months ago, she said, I was sitting alone at a restaurant waiting for a meeting that didn't show up, and a man sat down across from me by accident, and instead of correcting him, a fractional pause, I let him stay. She was looking at the room generally now, but James felt the weight of it anyway. He talked about his daughter, she said, about blueberry pancakes, about what it means to keep someone present after they're gone. He didn't ask what I owned, or what I drove, or what my valuation was. He just... She paused. He talked to me like a person, like there was nothing else he needed from the conversation, except the conversation. The room was absolutely still. I built this company because my father believed I could, she said. And I have run it for 8 years behind every wall I could construct. Because the last time I let someone pass the walls, I paid a significant price, and I decided that the price of trust was too high. She paused. I was wrong. James felt Amara's hand find his under the table. He held it. The price of trust is real, Vivian said. It is genuinely, honestly real. It costs something every time. But what I forgot, what I had to relearn over blueberry pancakes in a very ordinary kitchen on a very ordinary Saturday morning, is that the cost of not trusting is higher. It costs you everything you would have had if you'd been brave enough to stay open. She looked at the room. I started this foundation because my father used to say that the purpose of building something is to use it for something that matters, she said. I've spent 8 years using this foundation for things that matter externally. Tonight, I want to acknowledge something that has mattered internally this year in ways I wasn't prepared for. She paused. I remembered what it feels like to be a person. Not a CEO. Not a billionaire. Not a story someone writes about in a business publication. A person. Who laughs at things that are funny and cries when things are sad and eats chocolate chip pancakes on Saturday mornings and... Her voice changed, just slightly. And is grateful. Genuinely, completely grateful. For the people who sat down across from her and stayed. She picked up her notes. Thank you for your continued support of the Hale Foundation, she said in the smooth, professional register. Enjoy your evening. She stepped back from the podium. The applause started a half-second later. Not the obligatory kind, the real kind. The kind that builds from a few hands in the front to the whole room on its feet before she'd made it back to her seat. James stood with them. Amara beside him stood too. She was already looking for Vivian. Vivian, crossing the room back to the head table, found James's eyes first. He wasn't applauding. He was just looking at her. She held it for a moment, 3 seconds, 4, and then she looked away because the CEO had to maintain something, and there were 240 people in this room, and cameras on every wall. But James had seen her face in those 4 seconds. He had seen exactly what was in it, and he knew the way he'd known from the night she'd let him stay at her table, from the moment she'd sent 8 words to a general inquiry inbox from every Saturday morning, and every bad cup of coffee, and every real unmanaged smile that had stayed all the way through. He knew that whatever came next, the hardest and most important step had already been taken. She had stood in front of 240 people and told the truth. Not managed it, not calculated it, just said it. And something that had been behind a door for 3 years, maybe longer, maybe all the way back to the morning she got the call about her father. Maybe to the industry event photograph with Donovan Price. Maybe to every relationship that had ended with someone taking something she hadn't offered. Something that had been behind all of those doors finally irrevocably stepped out into the room. The program moved on. The dinner continued. An hour later, when the formal portion of the evening had ended and the room had relaxed into conversation, and the particular loosened warmth of a successful event reaching its conclusion, Vivian came to their table. She sat down next to Amara. Amara looked at her with complete directness. "You didn't use notes," she said. "No," Vivian said. "Was that planned?" "No," Vivian said. Amara nodded approvingly. "Daddy says the best things you say are the ones you didn't plan." "Your daddy says a lot of true things," Vivian said. Amara leaned in slightly. "What are you going to do now?" she said. "Now that you said the true thing in front of everyone." Vivian looked at her, then at James, then back at Amara. "I'm going to keep doing it," she said. "One day at a time." Amara considered this. Then she reached into James's jacket pocket and extracted Gerald the elephant and placed him carefully on the table between herself and Vivian. "Gerald thinks that's a good plan," she said. Vivian looked at the small stuffed elephant on the white linen tablecloth of a black-tie charity gala. Then she looked at James. And she did something she had not done in front of 240 people. Something she had not done in front of Thomas Aiken or Gerald Marsh or Patricia Wu, something she had not done in front of Rachel or her legal team, or a single journalist who had ever written about her. She laughed, fully, without catching it, without measuring it, without taking it back. It filled the space around the three of them warm and private, and completely real. James watched it happen. He thought about a restaurant on a Friday night. A wrong table. A woman eating alone who had every reason to correct the mistake and send him somewhere else. He thought about 11 seconds, sobbed. He thought about, "You made me smile again," the words she hadn't said yet, but that he could see right here, right now in a hotel ballroom with a stuffed elephant on the tablecloth and his daughter watching everything with her mother's steady, knowing eyes. He thought about what it meant to stay. He had always known. But sitting here in this moment, he felt the full weight of it, not as loss, not as grief, not as the hard thing he'd built his life around surviving, as the thing on the other side of the hard thing, as proof that staying all the way through was worth exactly what it cost. Thomas Aiken was 3 tables away. James didn't look at him. He looked at Vivian Hale laughing at a stuffed elephant on a white tablecloth, and he thought Renee would have loved this moment. And he held it. All of it. The same way he'd learned to hold everything that mattered. Carefully, completely, without letting it go. The morning after the gala. Chicago woke up gray. Not the dramatic gray of a storm coming, just the quiet, settled gray of a Sunday in late summer, when the city has decided to rest. James made coffee at 6:45, stood at the kitchen window in his old sweatshirt, and watched the street below move at the slow pace of a neighborhood not yet ready to be awake. His phone was on the counter face down. He already knew what was on it. He'd heard the notification start around midnight after the gala ended, after he'd put Amara to bed, still wearing one of her good shoes, because she'd fallen asleep in the car on the way home after he'd sat in the kitchen for an hour, with a glass of water, thinking about a woman laughing at a stuffed elephant on a white tablecloth. He turned the phone over. 47 notifications. News alerts, social mentions, 3 missed calls from Kevin, and a text from a number he didn't recognize that said, "Only saw the gala coverage. Who are you exactly?" He deleted that one without responding. The news alerts were what he expected. Vivian Hale makes surprise. Personal revelation at annual gala. Hale Industries, CEO, speaks candidly about trust and relationships at foundation event. Who is the mystery man at Vivian Hale's table? That last one had a photograph taken from across the room, slightly blurred the three of them at the table with Gerald the elephant visible on the white linen. He looked at the photograph for a long time. Then he put the phone back down, made himself breakfast. At 7:15 his phone rang. He looked at it. Vivian. He picked up. "Good morning," he said. "Have you seen the coverage?" she said. It wasn't quite a question. "Some of it," he said. "Are you okay?" "Rachel has been up since 5, she said. She sent me a summary at 6. 14 major outlets. Most of them they're not bad actually, surprisingly. A few are speculative, but nothing." She paused. "Nothing that isn't manageable." "That's not what I asked," he said. A pause. "I'm okay," she said. And this time when she said it, it had a different quality from the "I'm fine" she'd used in the past, the managed, sealed-off version. This one had something underneath it. Something that was actually checking in with itself before it answered. "I'm genuinely okay. I thought I'd wake up this morning and feel exposed, or regretful, or like I'd made a tactical error. But I feel like myself," she said quietly. "Which is, James, I don't know how to explain how unfamiliar that is. Waking up and feeling like what I did yesterday was exactly what I meant to do. Not managed after the fact, not reframed. Just right." He leaned against the counter. "That's what truth feels like," he said. "Takes some getting used to." She was quiet for a moment. "Amara," she said. "Is she still asleep?" he said. "She went down in the car. I carried her up. She's going to wake up in approximately 40 minutes and ask for pancakes and want to know if we can call you." "She can call me," Vivian said, "whenever she wants." "I'll tell her." Another pause, longer than the others, the kind that meant something was being considered carefully. "James," she said. "Yeah, last night, after you and Amara left." She stopped, started again. "I went back to the penthouse, and I stood at the window. I do that, you know that I stand at the window when I need to think. And I thought about the last 3 months. Everything that happened, the diner, the park, the board meeting, the photograph, the gala." She paused. "And I realized something." "What?" "I've been waiting," she said, "for the thing that goes wrong. I've been waiting this whole time for the moment when you look at me differently. When you find the thing that makes you decide the cost is too high. Because in my experience..." She stopped. "In my experience, that moment always comes. Every person I have ever let close has eventually found their moment." "Vivian, let me finish," she said. "I'm not telling you this because I found the moment. I'm telling you because I realized last night that I've been holding my breath for 3 months, waiting for you to become someone else. And you haven't." A pause. "You are exactly the same person who sat down across from me by accident and apologized for being late to a date that wasn't me. And I don't know what to do with that, James. I genuinely don't know what to do with a person who stays the same." He was quiet for a moment. "You get used to it," he said. "Slowly." She made a sound, not quite a laugh, but something adjacent to it. "I'm working on that," she said. "I know you are," he said. "I can see it." "Can you?" she said. "What does it look like?" He thought about it honestly. "It looks like someone learning to leave the doors open before they've decided whether they trust what's going to come through them," he said. "It looks brave, even when it doesn't feel brave, especially then." The line was quiet. "I'm coming over Saturday," she said finally. "I know," he said. "I'll bring something, for breakfast, something besides myself. Amara will tell you the chocolate chips are non-negotiable. I already know the chocolate chips are non-negotiable," she said. And the warmth in her voice, unmanaged, unhurried, entirely real, was something he had been watching arrive for 3 months, and was still not prepared for how completely it changed the quality of everything around it. They hung up. James stood in his kitchen with the gray Sunday morning outside the window and coffee going lukewarm in his mug. He thought about Renee. Not with grief exactly, or not only with grief, with gratitude mostly. The particular and very specific gratitude of a man who has been loved well enough by one person that he knows without having to be taught what it looks like when it's real. He picked up his coffee. "Thank you," he said quietly. To the kitchen, to the gray light, to the room she was still in. Then he went to check on Amara. 3 weeks later, Thomas Aiken resigned from the Hale Industries board. The official statement cited personal reasons and a desire to pursue other interests. No further explanation was given. Vivian confirmed it to James in a text on a Wednesday morning. 4 words: Aiken is stepping down. Then a second text 12 seconds later. "Don't ask me how." He responded, "I won't. You okay?" She responded, "Better than okay." He put his phone in his pocket and went back to his spreadsheets and smiled at the screen for longer than was professionally appropriate. Kevin from across the office said, "You're doing the face again." "What face?" "The face you do when something good happened and you don't want to talk about it yet." "I don't have a face." "James. Brother, you absolutely have a face." James turned back to his computer. Aiken resigned from Vivian's board. Kevin was silent for 3 full seconds. Then quietly, and with great feeling, "Good." "Yeah," James said. "Good," Kevin said again and went back to his work. October arrived the way Chicago Octobers do. Sudden and serious, the warmth leaving overnight like it had somewhere more important to be. Amara started 2nd grade. She informed her new teacher on the first day that she intended to be a scientist and possibly also a judge, and that these goals were not mutually exclusive. Her teacher sent James an email that said only, "She's remarkable. You must be very proud." He read it 3 times. Vivian, that same week, completed the DataSync integration on schedule 2 weeks ahead of the original projection, which Rachel communicated to the board, with the specific quiet triumph of a person who had been waiting several months to deliver exactly that information. The board meeting was by all accounts brief and uncomplicated. Nobody raised questions about personal judgment or external perception. James heard about it from Vivian over the phone while he was making dinner. "How did it feel?" he said. "Professional," she said. "Correct. Clean." "That's not what I mean." A pause. "It felt like closing a chapter," she said. "Not the DataSync chapter. The other one. The one that started with the board meeting in August." "Good," he said. "What comes next?" "I don't know yet," she said. That's the strange part. I usually know exactly what comes next. I have a 5-year plan and a contingency for the contingency. And right now, she paused. Right now I have Saturday mornings, and a 7-year-old who is teaching me about bubble theory, and a man who makes terrible lemon chicken. "I've gotten better at the lemon chicken," he said. "You have," she agreed. "It no longer tastes like sad." High praise. "From Amara, yes," she said. "From me, it's genuinely good now. You should be proud." He laughed. She laughed. And the ordinary miracle of 2 people laughing together through a phone on a Wednesday evening while dinner cooked and the city moved outside the window was not lost on either of them. The specificness of it, the realness, the way it sounded like something that had always been there and was only now finding its way to the surface. "James," she said when the laughing settled. "Yeah. I need to tell you something." "Okay." He turned the heat down on the stove, gave her his full attention. "My lawyer called this morning," she said, "about the property in the Lincoln Park area, the residential building I've owned for 4 years that I've been using as a rental investment. I've been thinking about it differently lately." He waited. "It's a brownstone," she said. 3 floors. It's been tenant-occupied since I bought it, but the current tenants are relocating to Seattle, and the building will be vacant in December." She paused. "It's 4 blocks from the park." He went very still. 4 blocks from the park. 4 blocks from Amara's bench. From the walking path where someone had taken a photograph that ended up in a business gossip column. from the neighborhood that had become, without either of them deciding it explicitly, the territory where their worlds met. "Vivian," he said carefully. "I'm not—" She stopped. "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm not presenting this as I'm not doing the thing where I use resources to accelerate something before it's ready. I want to be clear about that. What are you doing then?" A pause. "I'm telling you that I have a building," she said, "that is going to be empty in December, that is 4 blocks from a park that matters to me, in a neighborhood that has become—" She stopped. "That has become important. And I'm telling you that I don't know what to do with that yet. But I know I wanted to tell you, before I made any decisions, because making decisions without telling you feels wrong now." She paused. "That's new for me. Decisions have always been mine alone. And now one of them feels incomplete without your voice in it." He stood in his kitchen. Outside, the October wind moved through the street. He thought about a wrong table, a woman who didn't correct the mistake, an hour and a half and a tiramisu, and 11 seconds of an unguarded smile. He thought about what it cost to stay, and what it gave back. "Tell me about the building," he said. She told him. He listened, and when she finished, he said, "What does it feel like when you imagine it?" "Not the investment. The building. What does it feel like?" She was quiet for a moment. "Like something I've been walking toward for a long time," she said, "without knowing it." "Then you have your answer," he said. "Same as always." She exhaled, long, slow, the way she did when something settled. "Saturday," she said. "I want to show you something." "What?" "The park," she said, "from a different angle. There's something I want to say, and I want to say it there." "Okay," he said. "Bring Amara," she said. "She'll want to bring Gerald." "Gerald is always welcome," she said. And the smile he could hear in her voice was the full one, the real one, the one that stayed. Saturday arrived cold and clear, the kind of October morning that makes Chicago look like a painting of itself. Sharp light, bright sky. The trees in the park gone gold and red at the edges. They met at the park entrance at 9:30. Amara wore her heaviest coat and had Gerald tucked under her arm, because Gerald, she had explained with great patience on the walk over, did not have a coat of his own, and it was Vivian's job to keep him warm when she held him, which she would be doing, because Amara had decided this. Vivian was already there when they arrived. Standing just inside the gate, her hands in the pockets of a dark coat, her hair down under a simple hat. She looked like a person, just a person in a park on a Saturday morning, waiting for the people she wanted to see. Amara walked directly to her and handed her Gerald. "He's cold," Amara said. "I'll keep him warm," Vivian said, tucking the elephant against her coat with the seriousness it deserved. James stood a few feet back and watched this transaction occur. He thought about the first Saturday morning in his kitchen, Vivian uncertain with the spatula waiting for the bubbles. 3 months ago, a different version of everything. They walked. The park was quiet the way parks are on cold Saturday mornings. A few dog walkers, a runner, a family with a stroller moving at the unhurried pace of people who have nowhere urgent to be. Amara walked ahead of them along the path, finding interesting things in the fallen leaves, with the focused attention she brought to all investigations. James and Vivian walked side by side. "You said you wanted to say something," he said. "I do," she said. "I'm finding the words." "Take your time." She was quiet for a moment. They walked past the bench, Amara's bench, the one she claimed on principle every time they came, and Amara was already there sitting with Gerald, conducting what appeared to be a detailed examination of an acorn. Vivian stopped walking. James stopped with her. She turned to face him. Fully. Not the sidelong, careful glance she'd used in the early weeks, not the measured eye contact of a board meeting or a press appearance. All the way. "I want to tell you something," she said. "And I want you to know that I've thought about it carefully, and I'm not saying it because I'm afraid, or because I feel obligated, or because the circumstances seem to call for it. I'm saying it because it's true. And because I've decided that saying true things out loud is the only way to live." He waited. "You changed something in me," she said. "Not fixed it, not repaired it. Changed it. The way a season changes, the way light falls in a room. The room is the same room, but everything in it is different because of how the light is now." She paused. "I didn't know how much I'd stopped seeing things clearly until you sat down across from me and talked about blueberry pancakes, and I laughed and couldn't figure out why I was surprised about it." She looked at him directly. "I was surprised," she said, "because I had forgotten that I was someone who could laugh like that. I had managed myself so completely for so long that I'd lost track of what was underneath. And you—" Her voice changed. Not unsteady. Something more deliberate than that. "You kept asking about the underneath. Not the company. Not the acquisition. Not the Forbes list. You kept asking about me, the actual me, and every time you asked I found a little more of it." James looked at her. The October light moved through the trees above them. Amara, 10 feet away on her bench, was very carefully not looking at them, which meant she was absolutely paying attention. "I'm not saying this to create an expectation," Vivian said. "I'm not asking you for anything right now. I needed you to know that this year—" She stopped. "That you are the most significant thing that has happened to me this year. Not the acquisition, not the data sync integration, not the board, not the gala, not any of it." She looked at him with complete steadiness, every wall down, every door open. "You." The wind moved through the park. James Caldwell stood very still. He thought about 6 years. About a parking lot outside an apartment building, and the word stage 4, and learning to hold someone all the way through the hardest thing, and coming out the other side, not broken, but different. Carrying something permanent that had changed the shape of everything he was. He thought about what Renee had made of him. Not despite the grief, but through it the specific person he had become because he had loved someone completely, and lost her, and stayed present for every moment of both. He thought about a wrong table. He thought about what staying looked like. He stepped toward her. He took her face in both hands gently, the way you hold something real, and he looked at her for a moment, making sure she was looking back, making sure this was happening in the full light of both of them, knowing exactly what it was. "Vivian," he said. "Yes," she said. "You made me brave again too," he said. "I want you to know that. You think I walked into that diner and that park and those Saturday mornings and gave something to you. And I did. But you gave me something back. You gave me proof that it was still possible to sit across from someone and feel like the world makes sense. I didn't know I was still looking for that. And then I accidentally sat at your table and—" He stopped. "And I found it. In a woman who ordered sparkling water and said my daughter's spicy water comment was hilarious and laughed and then looked surprised about it. She was looking at him the way she had in the park 3 months ago. The unmanaged look, the one with no calculation in it. You made me smile again," she said softly. "You, James, from the very first night. The tiramisu and the bad jokes and the cough syrup on your sleeve. You made me smile again." "I know," he said. "I could see it." "I know you could," she said. "That was the thing. You always saw it, even when I took it back." "I counted," he said. She blinked. "What?" "The first time you smiled and meant it," he said. "At Meridian. It lasted 11 seconds. I counted because I wanted to, because I knew it mattered, whatever it was. Even before I understood what." She stared at him. Then she did something she had not done in front of anyone in more years than she could count, something that cost everything and gave back more. She cried. Not dramatically. Not the way movies show people crying. Just quietly. The way real grief and real joy both arrive when they've been held back long enough. 2 tears, then more, her eyes staying open and looking at him the whole time, not hiding it, not managing it. He pulled her close. She let him. They stood in the park on a cold October Saturday with the gold and red trees above them and the city humming beyond the gates, and a 7-year-old on a nearby bench who was very, very deliberately studying an acorn. James held Vivian Hale and felt in the specific and unrepeatable way that only the truest moments feel, that every single thing that had brought him to this exact point, every grief, every Sunday morning alone, every lopsided pancake, every parent-teacher conference, every night he'd sat on a bathroom floor, and every morning he'd gotten back up had been necessary. Not punishment, not random, necessary. The path to here had required all of it. After a long moment, he heard Amara's footsteps in the leaves. She appeared beside them, looked up at both of them with her mother's eyes steady, knowing entirely present. She held out Gerald. "He wants a hug too," she said. Vivian laughed through the tears, full and real, the best kind of sound, the kind that means someone has let go of something heavy. She took Gerald. She looked down at Amara. "Thank you," she said, "for sharing your Saturdays with me." Amara thought about this seriously. "You're good at pancakes now," she said. "You earned it." "That's the highest compliment you've given me," Vivian said. "I know," Amara said simply. "I meant it." She took Vivian's hand. Then she reached up and took James's hand on the other side. And the three of them stood there in the park, a logistics coordinator from Cincinnati, in a good blue shirt, a billionaire who had learned to wait for the bubbles, and a 7-year-old scientist judge who had always known exactly what she was doing. And the October light fell across all of them, equally, the way light does, indifferent to net worth, or job title, or the distance a person has traveled to arrive at a single moment. Later weeks, later months. The story continuing, past the point where stories usually end. People would ask Vivian in interviews, in casual conversations, in the way strangers feel entitled to ask things of famous women, how it had happened, how she had changed, what had shifted. She always gave the same answer. Not because it was the managed answer, she had stopped managing answers, because it was the true one. She would say, "A man sat down at my table by accident, and I let him stay." And everything that came from that one decision to let someone stay instead of sending them away. And when people asked what was so different about him, she would pause, and she would say, "He never once looked at me like an opportunity. He just looked at me." And when people asked if she was happy, the question that used to make her flinch, because happiness had always felt like a variable she couldn't control, she would say without hesitation, "Yes." Not because everything was simple. It wasn't. The world was still the world, complicated, loud, full of people who wanted things from her, and headlines that reduced her to a narrative, and board meetings that required her to be impenetrable, and days that were hard in the specific ways that her life was hard. But there was also a kitchen 4 blocks from a park where a little girl taught her about bubble theory. And a Tuesday diner with bad coffee that tasted somehow like everything she'd forgotten she wanted. And a man who had held her face in both hands in the middle of a cold October morning and told her she'd made him brave again too. There was Gerald the elephant who attended every important occasion. There was Amara, who was always right about the chocolate chips. There was a blue shirt that meant something mattered. There was a table at a restaurant that someone had sat down at by accident and changed the entire direction of 2 lives. And there was this, the thing that money had never once in all the years of building and acquiring and defending and surviving been able to buy. Not because money wasn't powerful, but because what Vivian Hale had finally found was not available for purchase, not transferable, not acquirable through any deal she could structure or any negotiation she could win. It was only available the one way it had always been available, by letting someone stay, by being brave enough to not correct the mistake, by waiting for the bubbles before you flip and trusting that the thing you're making is worth the patience. James Caldwell had sat down at the wrong table, and for the first time in both their lives, the wrong thing turned out to be exactly, irrevocably, permanently right.